Today, warnings of exhausted ambulance and medical personnel as New South Wales hospital numbers continue to rise.
Indoor masks compulsory again throughout Queensland as the government seeks to slow the spread of the virus.
Anti-apartheid icon Desmond Tutu farewelled in Cape Town.
And more Melbourne Stars players test positive for COVID-19, but the delayed match against the Perth Scorchers will go ahead. Good morning, it's Sunday the 2nd of January. I'm Dan Borsha.
And I'm Joanna Nicholson. You're watching Weekend Breakfast, coming to you from the land of the Gadigal people. It's great to have your company this morning. All eyes will be on New South Wales hospital numbers today, which have more than doubled in the past week. The number of people with COVID in New South Wales hospitals is now over 900, up from around 200 on the 18th of December, and 79 people are in intensive care.
The isolation requirements have been reduced for asymptomatic healthcare staff who are close contacts to meet staff shortages. There were 22,577 new infections yesterday and 4 deaths, sadly, including a woman in her 80s from a Western Sydney aged care home.
But if the numbers get so high, then you still overload the health system, and that's what's starting to happen now. A colleague wrote an op-ed in the Sydney Morning Herald 2 days ago calling the decision cavalier. I don't know that I would support those words, but essentially the government has had to reverse the lifting of the transmission restrictions a day or two before Christmas, and now we've been forced into reducing the isolation requirements on health staff because we were running out of health staff. Does that call into question the decision the government made to undo all transmission restrictions on the 15th of December? It might well do.
It's been revealed the Victorian Health Minister rejected calls for tighter restrictions to be reintroduced. Advice published under the state's new pandemic laws shows Chief Health Officer Brett Sutton called for the reintroduction of restrictions including density limits in hospitality venues and the wearing of masks indoors. But Health Minister Martin Foley rejected all suggestions except for indoor masks, saying it could reduce compliance and undermine the confidence in the public health response.
Wearing a mask is now required in all indoor settings in Queensland except the family home in an effort to slow the escalating spread of coronavirus. Authorities are also urging employers to return to work from home arrangements where possible. The state recorded 2,226 new cases yesterday, with cases rising in the remote community town of Cherbourg in Queensland's south.
Police officers in Perth have climbed walls to get into a locked bar packed with hundreds of people breaching COVID rules. Partygoers at the private event at George Hotel were seen dancing without masks on, with black curtains covering the venue's windows. The operators are facing charges, significant fines and the prospect of losing their liquor licence.
Really disappointed at what I've been briefed and the vision I've seen. In a state of emergency, that is blatant, it's wrong, and I believe they'll be facing very serious charges.
A grass fire in Victoria's west is nearly under control as crews work on containment lines around the fire's edge. The fire near Langoob started across the South Australian border on Friday and moved quickly through agricultural land and scrub. No homes have been lost to the fire, but sheds, livestock and native habitat have been destroyed.
A bushfire in Perth's northern suburbs has been brought under control. The blaze at Shepherd's Bush in Kingsley burned close to homes yesterday. It started near the intersection of Shepherd's Bush Drive and Peckham Crescent. Water bombers helped crews on the ground protect homes just metres away from the fire front.
Cyclone Seth is whipping up dangerous surf along Queensland's southeast coast. Authorities are warning the Category 1 system may strengthen as it tracks south. Seth has caused a severe weather warning for the Gold Coast, Maroochydore, Coolangatta, Moreton Island, Noosa Heads and Redcliffe.
A body has been found in the search for a teenage girl who fell from a houseboat into the River Murray on New Year's Eve. The 17-year-old's body was found yesterday afternoon following an extensive aerial, ground and water search. A report will be prepared for the coroner.
An investigation is underway into a stampede that killed at least 12 people at a religious shrine in India. The pilgrims were killed on Saturday morning at a Hindu shrine in Kashmir. The huge crowd of devotees had been trying to enter the shrine when the crush happened.
Archbishop Desmond Tutu has been farewelled at a state funeral in South Africa. Mourners gathered in Cape Town to celebrate the Nobel Peace Laureate and anti-apartheid activist who died last week aged 90. He's been remembered as a warm and merciful figure whose moral might permeated South Africa's darkest hours.
He was there with the freedom fighters, confronting the apartheid regime and comforting its victims. He was not content to preach about social justice from the pulpit. He was with the homeless, the helpless, the persecuted, the sick and the destitute, in the streets, in the shelters, and in homes.
Hundreds of Colorado residents suffered a dumping of snow and frigid temperatures after the wildfire that tore through the state. At least 6 inches of snow fell over homes devastated in Thursday's fire. At least 7 people were injured in the fires, but no deaths have been reported.
And it's been a cold start to 2022 for a group of brave Italian divers. They've taken an icy plunge in Rome's freezing Tiber River in a tradition that spanned more than 50 years. This year, just 4 people took part in the 30-metre dive, but they had hundreds of onlookers. The most famous participant is a man in his 70s known as Mr. OK. He was the final diver. So just a few people taking part. There's probably good reason for that in a freezing river.
Just the 4 of them.
Just the 4 of them. But Mr. OK is doing okay at 70 to be doing that.
That's pretty impressive.
Maybe that's his secret.
A secret weapon is...
Secret to being okay.
Dive in once a year into the freezing river.
Yeah, exactly.
Not sure if I'd be up for that.
Me neither. No, not okay.
I wouldn't be okay with that.
Let's talk sport now. Daniela Intilli joins us. Danny, more COVID cases in the domestic cricket.
Yep, but the game will go on. 3 more Melbourne Stars players have tested positive to COVID-19 after 7 players and 8 staff were already confirmed to have the virus. The Stars match against the Perth Scorchers in Melbourne will go ahead today after it was postponed when the first cases were discovered on the 30th of December. The final squad will be announced this morning. The Brisbane Heat have claimed a 14-run win over the Hobart Hurricanes at Bellerive Oval. Xavier Bartlett was named player of the match for Brisbane, taking 4 wickets, including the top 3 of the Hurricanes' batting lineup. He finished with a career best 4 for 30, while all-rounder James Bazley top scored with an unbeaten 44 from 27 deliveries to help the Heat reach 8 for 150. In reply, the Hurricanes managed just 136 from their 20 overs. Elsewhere, the Sydney Sixers and Melbourne Renegades match was abandoned due to rain. Adelaide United has claimed its first win of the A-League men's season with a 4-0 thumping of the Wellington Phoenix at Hindmarsh Stadium. Craig Goodwin scored a double for United after the Phoenix conceded 2 second-half penalties. It was the only men's game scheduled for round 7, with the remaining 5 rescheduled following postponements caused by rising COVID cases in clubs around the league. In the Women's A-League, Adelaide United kicked off the new year with a 4-2 victory over Perth Glory in Adelaide. Chelsea Dorber starred in the first half with 2 goals. A penalty for the Glory made the sides even at the 53rd minute mark, but Adelaide proved too good, kicking off another 2. And for more sports news and analysis, check out abc.net.au/sport. And good news, though, with the Ashes squad, the remaining members did test negative at this point, and Usman Khawaja will be making a return.
OK, good news. We'll keep across it. Thanks,
great.
Danny. See you later on. It's great to have your company here on Weekend Breakfast. Later this hour, with bushfires and COVID shutdowns, it's certainly been a hard few years for Mogo Zoo, which is just on the New South Wales south coast.
But now there's finally some good news to report, with a baby giraffe born late last year, ready to go on exhibit. We'll speak to Zoo Director Chad Staples later on in this hour.